hello humans of the world. It's me, Ellie Krug with Ellie 2.0 Radio on lovely AM 950, talking to you from the bunker in lovely Eden Prairie, Minnesota. Hello, happy Pride. Happy Pride. It's Pride weekend in the Twin Cities, which means there will be a gazillion people at Loring Park in Minneapolis over the weekend. That includes me. I'll be staffing the AM 950 booth at Pride from 2 to 4 today. I'll even have my 80-pound pup, Jack, with me. Yeah, it's going to be 4 hours with Jack. Hopefully he's going to get tired out because he's going to want to just keep talking to people and nudging them. And God forbid there's another dog that goes by, he's going to want to talk to that dog. Okay, but come by and say hello if you're going to go out to Pride. That'd be today from 2 to 6. I will be out there. Not 2 to 4, 2 to 6. It's going to be 4 hours. Okay, all right. We got that bit of housekeeping out of the way. And now let's get to today's show. The big interview is with Presbyterian Pastor Dean Seal. You may recall that I spoke at his church in Chaska earlier this month. I talked about that in one of my C blocks. And of course, I will have the C block, and I'll talk about my work as an idealist. But now, let's talk about our featured idealist, Jim Obergefell. Jim Obergefell. While that name may not register with many of you, certainly you will know what it is that he did. Jim Obergefell was the plaintiff in the U.S. Supreme Court case Obergefell v. Hodges, in which the Supreme Court in 2015 declared that gay and lesbian people have a constitutional right to marry. That case was decided with 5 justices ruling in favor of marriage equality and 4 of them dissenting. And I'll come back to that in a bit because we are reeling right as I speak to you, reeling from what the Supreme Court has done with abortion rights. But first, who is Jim Obergefell? Sorry, I'm tripping over it, but you're getting the idea. Jim Obergefell. He was born in Sandusky, Ohio in 1986 and attended college in Ohio to become a teacher. He taught German after college. While in college, Jim met John Arthur. The two men fell in love and moved in together. Eventually, Jim and John worked together as IT and business management consultants. In 2011, John Arthur, Jim's partner, was diagnosed with ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. By mid-2013, John's disease had progressed greatly. At that point, the couple decided that they wanted to marry. Now, you may recall that in 2013, marriage equality, now pay attention to this, okay, because guess what? We're going backwards. That in 2013, marriage equality, where gay and lesbian folks could marry, okay, that's what marriage equality is, it was a hodgepodge. Some states, like Minnesota and Iowa, allowed it, whereas many other states prohibited it. One of the prohibiting states was Ohio, where Jim and John were living. So in order to get married, and with the help of friends who pooled funds, Jim Obergefell rented a medically equipped plane and hired a nurse to fly his partner, John, to Baltimore, Maryland. Marriage between two men was legal in Maryland. And I mean, this is a story of incredible guts and allyship because other people helped all of this happen. But they flew the plane to Baltimore, the airport in Baltimore, okay, because in Maryland, same-sex couples could marry. The plane landed at the Baltimore airport and sat on the tarmac. And while the plane was on the tarmac, Jim and John exchanged vows and became legally married under Maryland law. The plane then took off and flew back to Ohio. This occurred in July of 2013. So they didn't even get off the plane, okay? And of course, John couldn't get off the plane because of his disease. So they just flew back to Ohio, where that was their home. But even though they were legally married, okay, under Maryland law, Ohio refused to recognize the marriage, okay, because Ohio said same-sex couples couldn't marry. And it was significant, okay, because it meant that when John passed and his passing was imminent, okay, Jim Obergefell couldn't be listed as the surviving spouse on John's death certificate. It also meant that he might not be able to get some benefits related to John's passing. So as a result of that incredible unfairness, Jim Obergefell filed a lawsuit in federal court in Ohio. This was while John was still hanging on to life. And the federal court decided in Jim's favor the very next day after the case was filed. But the state of Ohio, because they had to resist this, of course, they appealed that decision, and the higher court, the next court up, the Court of Appeals, upheld Ohio's ban on same-sex marriage. Jim then filed an appeal with the U.S. Supreme Court. Unfortunately, John died in October of 2013, and he would never see the results of Jim's case being considered by the U.S. Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court did eventually rule in Jim's favor. That decision came down on June 26, 2015. We're just 2 days away, okay, 2 days shy. As I'm giving you this, as you're listening to this, 1 day shy of the 7th anniversary of Obergefell versus Hodges, okay, the case that gave us marriage equality across the land, okay. The decision was read by then Justice Anthony Kennedy, who wrote in the court's majority opinion this, quote, "No union is more profound than marriage. For it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, devotion, sacrifice, and family. In forming a marital union, two people become something greater than once they were. After winning the case, Obergefell stated, quote, "It affirms that millions across the country already know what to be true in their hearts. Our love is equal." The four words etched onto the front of the Supreme Court, equal justice under law, applies to us too, unquote. So after the Supreme Court decision, Jim Obergefell, gosh, I'm so sorry about that, devoted his life to activism in support of LGBTQ plus people. He moved to Washington, D.C. and lived there for several years. He later moved back to Ohio and at present is running for the Ohio House of Representatives in District 89. The Democratic primary for that seat is on August 2nd, so we'll see what happens. I sure wish that idealist, Jim Obergefell, great luck. Now, back to the Supreme Court. I had written out my show notes, okay, for this show. I had written them out before the Dobbs decision, the abortion case came down. I had the show notes all done, and I'm writing here in my show notes, you know, about how it was a 5-4, you know, majority in Obergefell, okay, v. Hodges giving us marriage equality, and with me theorizing, okay, how now the court has a 6-3 split. All right, that's what I wrote. Now I was going to talk a little bit about that, you know, the ominous 6-3 split, and then of course the Dobbs decision came down. Okay, and the Dobbs decision, while it is horrible for women, it is also horrible for LGBTQ plus people. And Justice Thomas, as I was driving to the station to do this taping of my show, filed a concurring opinion today, concurring in the Dobbs case, but saying this was just the beginning. Abortion was just the beginning. Next, we're going after contraceptives. Can you imagine a state saying you can't take the pill? Can you imagine a state saying you can't do that? You know, nope, you can't get the pill. Just think about that. You can't get condoms. That's birth control. Can you imagine? Okay, but Thomas also saying coming after marriage equality after that, and coming after consensual sex between adults. Okay, and it's not all adults. It would just be gay people, adults. And I've got to tell you, everyone, This is incredible. But then there's one more thing, and that's me, a transgender woman who anybody paying attention to me in public knows I'm trans because the voice doesn't match the appearance, something you've heard from me about 9,000 times as I've done this show over the years. It's going to be worse, even worse for us, because I am absolutely certain the Supreme Court is going to say you can enact any law you want to against transgender people. And the reason for that is because there is language in the Dobbs case which talks about American tradition and history, that the Supreme Court has to recognize that as it's making its rulings. And for the Dobbs case, court essentially says, Roe v. Wade came in, 50 years ago, but before that, American history was that abortion was illegal. Abortion wasn't recognized when they founded when they ratified the Constitution. Abortion was bad, okay? Well, let me just tell you, transgender people were not even known. We were around, but, we were so far under the radar because us showing up in public in America meant at a minimum we're going to jail, but worse than that, we're going to get killed. And I anticipate right now the Supreme Court within the next 2 years is going to rule, is going to say, because there are cases coming up about transgender girls trying to play in sports. I am convinced the Supreme Court's going to come down with such broad language that it's only going to encourage legislators to pass more laws against transgender people, like, I can't go out in public. Like if your gender identity, which is mine is female, if it doesn't match what you were born with in terms of genitalia, okay, that it's wrong. You can't be in public. Maybe they're going to say you can't even have a job. I don't know. Stay tuned. All right. Okay, we're going to take a big break, and we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to talk with Pastor Dean Seal from Shepard of the Hill Presbyterian Church in Chaska, Minnesota. You will like Pastor Dean. In fact, it's the first, but not the last time I will have him on this show because he is so powerful. All right, so we'll be back. Talk to you on the other side. Thanks. And we're back on Ellie 2.0 Radio. By all means, remember, it's Pride Month. It's good to go look at, study up on Jim Obergefell, and it's good to study up on that case because who knows how long that case will be around. All right, so for the big interview right now, we've got Pastor Dean Seal from Shepard of the Hills Presbyterian Church in lovely Chaska, Minnesota. And I also note that the church is on a hill, here to talk with us. And Pastor Dean is stepping in kind of at the last minute. And he and I are going to talk about what the Supreme Court did yesterday and about the implications of it for the future, as well as we'll talk about some other things. Pastor Dean, thanks so very much for being on Ellie 2.0 Radio. I'm really thrilled to have you here.
Thanks for asking me. I'm a big fan.
Oh, well, thanks. And this probably will not, I'm certain this won't be the last time you and I are on this show together because you are a wealth of a whole lot of things.
Good.
Okay, but we had started down the road. I had given you some prompts for today about what we would talk about. And then in the time between when I gave you the prompts, because everyone, the sausage being made here that this show is being taped on Friday to air on Saturday and Sunday. In the time between when I gave you the prompts and when I got here to the station, the Supreme Court dumped on us the Dobbs decision. So one of the things that I wanted to talk with you about, and first we're going to need to get a little introduction to you, but one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is how not all religions, okay, and particularly the Presbyterian faith, which we're going to discuss here, not all religions have this line in the sand as it relates to abortion. So, but before we do that, Pastor Dean, you've been the pastor at Shepard of the Hills for a number of years, but you have a background in writing and in acting and in production of various things. You've had something on HBO. You wrote something for that. You want to give us the 2-minute Pastor Dean background?
Okay, I spent a lot of time performing comedy. I was in the biggest iteration was Mr. Elk and Mr. Seal, the college buddy of mine named Rob Elk. We sung a cappella funny songs that we wrote. We performed in New York City a lot. We performed at Catch a Rising Star at a time when Chris Rock and Jerry Seinfeld and Rosie O'Donnell were coming up. We ended up doing some work for the Comedy Channel, which then became Comedy Central. But we were there on the first day doing funny bumpers for them. We eventually got to do a pilot for HBO. We shot it at Paisley Park. We got it with Joel Hodgson of Mystery Science Theater 3000. And the pilot was a big fat bomb. It was really no good at all. $250,000 blown in a day. But that made me kind of not interested in TV anymore. So I went into theater. I ran the Fringe Festival for 4 years and brought attendance from 4,400 to 28,000. And I ran the Bryant Lake Bowl Cabaret Theater, where one of my big hits was Miss Richfield 1981, which was a drag act. And it was a huge, fantastic hit. Then I got out of showbiz and I went to the seminary, starting with theology and the arts, and then eventually into a Master of Divinity. I taught for 11 years at Augsburg College part-time, and then I became a pastor. So it's a social justice thing, starting with Dr. King and moving into what's connected to that, which is interfaith work. And so that's the basis of what I do at Shepherd of the Hill, singular.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. Ellie, come on. Of course I just lost the thought, but you and I got to know each other because I rang you up and then you asked me to come and speak at the church, which my listeners know that I did a couple of weeks ago. I talked about it on this show. And but today, though, let's talk a bit here about what happened with the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court has essentially taken away a right that it had recognized, not that it had given, a right that it had recognized that existed because of the way the Constitution is set up, with various provisions essentially saying that if the government doesn't have a compelling interest to get into your life, you got the right to make your own decisions about things. And now, of course, not only did that decision come down this morning, but just right before I went on the air, Justice Thomas issued a concurring opinion to that decision where he says, okay, this is just the start, because next up is contraceptives we're going to go after. We're going to go after marriage equality, and that president is only 7 years, so barely, would it even hold up, I'm sure, with the way the court's working. And then Thomas wrote that he wants to go after consensual sex between adults. Pastor, first of all, tell us about the Presbyterian kind of point of view as it relates to abortion, and as it relates to also humans being able to live their lives generally?
Yeah, the Presbyterian Church USA is the part I'm part of. There's like 18 Presbyterian denominations, but we're the biggest one, and we're the ones who are adamant about having rights for the LGBTQ community. We ordain gay people, we marry gay people, we welcome them into full citizenship. We also ordain women, and a lot of churches don't do that. The Catholics don't, most evangelical churches don't, the Southern Baptists don't. So we consider women to be fully human. And that's one of the reasons why we consider the LGBTQ community to be fully human. We are loved by God as God created us. So in terms of abortion, the Presbyterian Church is very clear on this. Presbyterian Church USA. We believe that if you choose to not have an abortion, that is a religious decision. But if you choose to prevent someone else from having an abortion, that is religious oppression. It is wrong, and it is bad, and should be illegal. Okay? So we have a rainbow flag out in front of our church. We have a Black Lives Matter flag out in front of our church. We just took on Moms Demand Action as one of our 16 missions to try and get more gun safety going. And this is going to be something that we do and we advocate for, and that we're adamant about. Women have the right to make those decisions. Now, for me, we had a cousin in our family who had 2 kids, but her mother had a stroke and died when she was 55. And when she got her 3rd pregnancy, the doctor said, you know what, you have to terminate this pregnancy or you will be dead at 31 and your kids won't have a mom. And so she had to terminate that pregnancy.
Right.
And then she lived to be 55. So this idea that somebody in the government is going to make a decision about what a doctor is recommending is abhorrent to me.
Well, not only that, I mean, of course, half the states now are going to ban abortion. And a good number of those states are going to ban abortion in all cases. Incest, rape, even the health of the mother, like the thing that you just described. And what, from a pastoral perspective, I mean, now we have to remember we're all here in Minnesota, right? And Minnesota is going to, in a variety of ways, has been and is going to be even more of like an island, okay, of an island of humanity, of allowing humans to be who they are. And so we have to take that into account. But what are the churches across, the Presbyterian churches across America, what are they saying about this? Because you knew that we all knew the decision was going to come down. And so what have you heard about them? The ones that are in states where the abortion bans are going to take effect, are they going to try and assist women so that women can go to other states where abortion is legal?
I don't know what they're doing on the national level. I know that they put out this statement when the decision was leaked. They put out this statement saying, let's be clear about where we stand on this. But what they're going to do in states like Kentucky, where the Presbyterian Church USA is actually headquartered, we don't know yet. So the Presbyterian Church is kind of small. We're only 1.2 million, but we're pretty influential. A lot of the U.S. government was initially based on the Presbyterian form of government. And we're politically active, and we have really high requirements for educational levels. So like Walter Mondale went to my home church at Westminster Presbyterian. Hubert Humphrey went to House of Hope in St. Paul Presbyterian. So we're embedded in the power structure, actually. And that's a cool thing when they do the right thing. They wrote a check for $1 million to help Beacon Interfaith Housing build an apartment complex for young people who are 16 to 24, a lot of them who were gay and had been kicked out of the house because they were LGBTQ. So they're active politically. And how that takes form, we're not sure yet.
Well, all right. Well, I mean, I love it that you're part of the Presbyterian Church, the Presbyterian Church of did you say of the United States?
USA.
USA. Okay. All right. So I
The
love.
Church of America, which doesn't ordain women. And so they're back in 1492. But PCUSA is up to date.
Okay. All right. So, but the problem, as I read this, at least the syllabus of the Dobbs decision, is that the Supreme Court has decided we're going to go back and study, start basing things on history and tradition, and I just.
The problem is whose history, whose tradition. There's a lawsuit from a Jewish community in Florida that's suing the state of Florida, saying you have no right to ban abortion for a Jewish mother because we have no prohibition to that effect. In fact, you are required to perform an abortion to save a mother. Okay, so it is antithetical to the freedom of religion. It's a violation of my freedom of religion. It's a violation of the Jewish people's freedom of religion. So what they're doing is saying, well, we're not going to pay attention to your history and tradition. We're going to pay attention to the history and tradition that we want to pay attention to.
Right. And of course, that history and tradition generally, held that there would be no birth control, generally held that gay and lesbian people, LGBTQ plus people, could be arrested and imprisoned, okay, and then banned from employment, all right? Held that, transgender people, forget it. We're not even going to show up anybody's radar, okay, because they want
to rob that community of its citizenship, which is totally wrong.
And then, of course, consensual sex, between adults. And, for the longest time in the world, there was, until Lawrence v. Texas, there was all these laws on the books about sodomy, which, of course, were only enforced against gay people and not certainly against straight people. And so
you don't realize that sodomy includes oral sex.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm talking about that. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, well, listen, Pastor, we're gonna take a break. Okay, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this. Okay. All right. So, everyone, you're listening to me, Ellie Krug, on Ellie 2.0 Radio. We've been talking to Pastor Dean Seal from Shepard of the Hill Presbyterian Church in Chaska, Minnesota. If you like what you hear, visit my website at elliekrug.com. We'll be back in a second. Thanks. And we're back, Ellie 2.0 Radio. We're on the big interview, and we've been speaking with Pastor Dean Seal, who is the pastor at Shepard of the Hill Presbyterian Church in Chaska, Minnesota. And we've been speaking mainly about the Supreme Court's decision that came down yesterday in the Dobbs decision, and then a little bit about what Clarence Thomas has written. Pastor, we were talking about religion and how, causing somebody, saying a law that says that no one can get a religion is violative of other people's religions. And isn't it really true that these abortion laws, all of these, anti-abortion laws, they're clothed in language of secularism, okay, because they're being passed by legislatures. But the reality is that it's a group of mainly Christian. By the way, I think Christian people are really good people. Okay, and I think religion is a good thing. Okay,
not all the time,
but mainly a group of Christian people of just some denominations who are funding those politicians who have the political clout because they can get people out to vote. And in that sense, all of these laws really are religious based. They clothe them in secularism, but that's not really what the truth is. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're right, but it goes deeper than that. Guys like Karl Rove were trying to activate the evangelical voting base because evangelicals didn't believe in being involved in politics. So
Right.
they said, what can we do to motivate them? And so they went after abortion and gay rights, LGBTQ people. They said, we're going to cast those as evil and a very threatening thing, and we'll gin up the excitement that way. He said, I'm okay with gay people having rights, but if I put an anti-gay marriage bill on the ballot, then we get a much better turnout for Republican voters. So it's a very cynical thing that the right-wing crackpot Republicans use to drive voters who are being told that this is an immediate threat to their life.
Right. Well, so we're talking about fear, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about motivating people with fear and with marginalization of other humans, okay?
Yeah.
And to me that's extremely, I mean, where do you draw the line? I mean,
It goes into anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. That's how Native Americans are prevented from voting. As you know, as a white cisgendered male, I'm not going to pay the price here, but everybody around me that I care about is going to. And it's crazy right-wing crackpot extremist Christians who are driving this.
Right. And I mean, I'm a unifier, not a divider. All right. Part of what's driving is that these folks, okay, who have the religious conviction to want abortion banned, have they ever met anybody who was raped and carrying the baby of a rapist for 9 months and then making a decision about whether you have to keep going to keep the kid or place the kid for adoption. I mean, have they ever met anybody? So it's an absence of understanding lived experiences. That's my view.
Well, a lot of the times they will cut themselves off from being exposed to anybody who has that kind of experience. Now, I'm gonna be a little Ellie here and talk about a person I know who is an advocate for banning abortions. She is connected with a group of children who and they're adults now who said we were the product of rape, and what you're saying is I don't have a right to live. So it's not crystal clear. It's not black and white. It's muddy and paradoxical. Okay, but the question is, who's going to make the decision? Is the decision going to be made by the person who's pregnant and the doctor that's advising them, or is the decision going to be made by the government? And one of the great hypocrisies here is that the Republicans have always said we don't want the government interfering in people's lives. Unless you're a woman, then we're going to tell you what to do.
Right. Or coming down the pike, if you're gay or transgender, or if you were foreign born in another country, if you practice, Islam, we could go down the whole kind of list here.
What if they told everybody they couldn't eat pork? Okay, that would create a problem. But it's the same thing. I'm not trivializing it here. What I'm saying is that they're making religious decisions for other people.
Right.
And you can't do that in the United States, I thought. So
well, right.
This is a lesson from the Jewish tradition, is that sometimes things move forward and sometimes they move back. And we have to be ready to fight back when things start regressing.
But that assumes we have the tools to fight back, okay? I mean, with the way that gerrymandering has been done in various states, people, the majority of people, all right, they don't have the political power because the way the voting districts are set up. And so, I mean, this is a rigged card. And the Supreme Court, of course, has said, as it relates to voting rights, the Voting Rights Act of 1964, I mean, essentially they've gutted the Voting Rights Act. So the Supreme Court has set it up that they're going to go do what they want to, all right? And if you want to legislate a reversal of what the Supreme Court does, good luck to you, because the mechanisms are now set for you not to be able to do that.
I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying that those are where we have to fight.
I mean,
we have we have to turn the Minnesota Senate from red to blue, which we can do. We only need 3 seats. And in the federal government, we need 10 seats, okay, because of the filibuster, which is a racist pro-slavery item. We get ruled by a minority government, and gerrymandering is going to make that harder. But none of it's impossible, okay? And Dr. King will tell you that sometimes it looks pretty bad. But when things are at their darkest, that's when you can see the stars, okay? So we need to grab a hold of whatever is in front of us that we have to do and just start doing it and fight back. And it's going to be like a knife fight in a phone booth, okay? It's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. We're going to have to duke it out. But the blowback, as far as they're concerned, starts now. We have to fight back with whatever we have, wherever we are.
Well, Pastor Dean, I think that's a really great thing to end this interview on. Okay, it's a call to arms, and not like the weapon arms, okay, but a call to action. I should say that better. And
I want to give you my our website, chaskachurch.org, if you want to be part of this. You don't have people can volunteer at our church if they're atheists or be involved politically. We don't care. We're going to do this stuff, and it's because of our faith tradition, but we welcome people to participate.
Well, and I'm going to have you back. I'll have you back in the next couple of months, and we'll talk about what Shepard of the Hill does, okay, because it does incredible work. And we'll
ready.
Yeah, I really appreciate you greatly, and thank you for being on Ellie 2.0, and we'll be back in touch, okay?
Big fan of your work. I'll do whatever I can for you.
Thank you. Thanks, Pastor. Okay, everyone, we've been speaking to Pastor Dean Seal of Shepard of the Hill Presbyterian Church in Chaska, Minnesota. Go check it out, churchonthehill.org. Oh, I got it wrong, and you're muted. Sorry, Pastor. Okay, just check out Presbyterian Church in Chaska. Google that. You're going to find the church, okay? All right, Shepard of the Hill. All right, so everyone, I've got to take a break. I'll come back, okay, and then we'll talk about my work as an idealist. Thanks. And we're back. Ellie 2.0 Radio. Okay, you know what? This has been a whole show filled with me not being able to say Obergefell, okay, correctly, all right, and misstating other things. So I've got the email, or excuse me, the website for Shepard of the Hill Presbyterian Church in Chaska. Let me just reiterate it here. It is chaskachurch.org. Okay, Chaska, Chaska, church.org. All right. Okay, I've got like 4 minutes to be able to give you my C block, the work I do as an idealist. And, so yesterday, it's been a very busy June, okay, because I'm, transgender, and it's Pride Month, and a lot of organizations want somebody who's LGBTQ plus to talk in that month. Okay, so I've done a lot of talks. But yesterday, I presented to educators, the leadership team for Eastern Carver County Schools, District 112. I spoke to, about 40, 45 principals, assistant principals, and deans of all the various schools, high schools, elementary schools, middle schools, and I gave them gray area thinking. And it was great because I'm back in front of a live audience, and we can do some things live, and it's just role playing and all of that stuff. And I've just got to tell you, okay? First, and as far as I could tell, they loved gray area thinking. But I've got to tell you, I so admire these folks. And I admire educators in general. I've got 2 educators in my family, and I guess you could technically say when I'm training, I'm an educator, but I'm not going to wear that mantle very well, I'll tell you. But I was extremely impressed by yesterday by the audience members' commitment to getting things right around diversity and equity and inclusion, around wanting to lead. We had a discussion about bumpiness and that it's the leader's responsibility to lean in, to face into the bumpiness rather than to run from it. I mean, generally humans, we don't like to be made uncomfortable. But when our leaders, when they model that it's okay to get uncomfortable, because once you get uncomfortable, once you have to deal with stuff that ordinarily you would not deal with, that you would ordinarily not talk about, once you agree, okay, all right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to try and understand this. Once you do that, go through the bumpiness, your perspective changes. And it's changed perspective. It's changed perspective that gets us change. Because now people can understand better the lived experiences of people who are different or other compared to them. And you know what? And it's so incredibly important that our educators are willing to do that, because they're teaching our kids. And you know from other conversations I've had with you here on this show, where I've been going to the middle schools and the high school, alternative high school, out in District 1-2 to talk to LGBTQ plus students, plus some students who are just allies. And I've talked to you about how impressed I am about those students and about how self-aware they are of things. And I've got to tell you, okay, let me just tie it together in 40 seconds. I'm scared to death of what the Dobbs decision that we've talked about at length in this show, the abortion case, scared to death about what it's going to do to young humans, about the way they're going to view the world. These educators I talked to yesterday, I think that they are wonderful resources to help those young humans. But it's not going to be easy. It's a long, long slog, as Pastor Dean reminded us. Okay, well, listen, I hope that you've enjoyed the show. Happy Pride to you. Maybe I'll see you out at Loring Park this afternoon. Big thanks to my producer, Patrick, who has had to do math on top of high-level math. Patrick, you did a great job. Listeners, hey, you may not hear from me for a couple of weeks now, okay? Because travel and the 4th of July vacation. But in the time between now and you hear me again, do me a favor. Go out, make the world better. Do something good for someone else. Take care.